It's everyone's favorite time of the year. Top 10 favorite books of the year list. I love these videos. These are absolutely great. This is my first one as a booktuber, and I have some absolutely epic books for you. I don't know how many I've read, that will come in a later video, but I've been able to get down to a top 10, which is good. I read a lot of good books this year. Before I get into it, please like and subscribe and tell us what your favorite books of the year were. First up is Blindness by Jose Saramago. If you know about this book, then you just know. This is a popular post-apocalyptic book, and what happens is slowly everyone in this country, the populace, goes blind, and we're learning to deal with life without sight. And we see all this through the eyes of a woman who isn't blind, and she's known as the doctor's wife. We don't know anyone's names in this book. Everyone's just described by like random things about them. You know, the doctor's wife, the doctor, the girl with the glasses, etc, etc. This is a fantastic book because the blind people have been put into a rundown old mental asylum, and the army are keeping them imprisoned there, sending them food, and we get to see how these people survive. It's weird seeing how people live without sight and just how important it is, especially when it comes to, you know, dignity and honor and, you know, just the general functioning of a human being. We see how it slowly disintegrates in this book. And this book does get quite dark in terms of, you know, there are 2 rape scenes in this book that are just absolutely brutal. The way Saramago is able to write this is it's so epically done. The writing style is unique. It's just a trail of thought. There are no speech marks. There's none of that stuff. It is just continuous word after word after word. It is quite something, but it adds to it. And once you kind of get yourself immersed into the story, it actually is a positive. It is very much a positive. And so yeah, this has stayed with me. I read this a few months ago, and it has stayed with me ever since. So I definitely recommend this. I absolutely love this book. And you know, I've got other videos about other post-apocalyptic books on this channel. For example, The Children of Men, The Unit, etc. And they just don't hold up. You can watch the reviews for those videos here, but they don't hold up. This Blindness has become the litmus test for post-apocalyptic books for me. And to be honest, even though I rated it an 88.95, it is underrated. It's still underrated. Next up, we got Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. And what can I say? I made a video review for this book, and it is just fantastic. It is fantastic. Wrapping up this duology actually took some doing, and Bardugo was able to meet the challenge head on, and her execution was exceptional. I absolutely love Crooked Kingdom. It's hilarious that there are videos on YouTube of people like crying and in tears over this book. And even though this book didn't reduce me to tears, it is still an epic read, and I definitely recommend it. Obviously you got to read The Six of Crows, which is the first book, before you get to this, but the stakes are higher for me than in The Six of Crows, and The Six of Crows was a very good book too. I don't know, I just have so much respect for Bardugo with the way he was able to wrap up this series. I have a lot of respect for authors who just know how to wrap up a series, like they understand the assignment. Next up is non-fiction. It is Seen Like a State, how certain schemes to improve the human condition have failed. And wow. Scott's analysis of ideologies, of socialism, high modernism, how literally what the subtitle is, how certain schemes that, you know, were made and created with good intentions just absolutely fell apart. We learn about the Soviet Union and the difficulties there with the centrally planned economy. We learn about Tanzania after it gained independence in the 20th century, and how the government there had this absolutely crazy scheme to sort of communalize farming. We learn a lot about agriculture in this book. We learn quite a bit about agriculture in this book, and just how there are certain players, whether from financial institutions to intellectuals to politicians, that have all had a hand in just absolutely just fumbling everything and just making life a whole lot worse for everyone. So yeah, it is quite something. Next up is Normal People. Again, you can check out my review for this book here, but I love Normal People. Normal People's definitely head and shoulders above the rest of Sally Rooney's discography. I haven't read her latest one, Intermezzo, but I've read the other ones, Beautiful World, Where Are You, and Conversations with Friends. Those were like average to like below average kind of books, like very, very mid. But Normal People, just absolutely fantastic. We follow Connell and Marianne from the time in sixth form to university and their secret relationship and just how they navigate life in Ireland and growing up. We deal with, you know, sexuality, abuse, neglect, class. There's a lot of class on this. There's a lot about class in this book. It's not just a romance book. It is so much more than that. And even the romance part isn't like the cheesy romances that, you know, that just basically flood literature these days. It is very well done and an exceptional book. It's one of my favorite books of all time. Next up, we've got The Hunger Games. This was part of my rereading as an adult series that you can check out here. This book holds up. There's a reason why everyone pretty much says it's a modern classic, and that's because it holds up even after all these years, even after the whole teenage fantasy craze had died down in Hollywood, and maybe even the YA fantasy craze has died down in literature. It's still prominent, of course. It is the best genre, to be honest, but mid 2010s, oh god, just we got everything. We got Hunger Games, we got Scythe, An Amber in the Ashes, we got all sorts. But yeah, The Hunger Games, you know what The Hunger Games is by now. You know what it is. Just read it. Just read it. Even if you've watched the films, just read the books. It is fantastic. The whole series is great also. Next up, we got Social Class in the 21st Century by Mike Savage. Mike Savage is a British sociologist, and this book was basically an expansion of a study that involved the BBC regarding class in the UK. This was very, very popular when it came out. Millions of people took this class calculator. What we learned from it was that there are 7 different social classes, and in this book, Savage breaks down each social class, their salary, their economic capital, their social capital, their cultural capital, and with some Bourdieu analysis as is a given when it comes to class. Savage clearly outlines the differences and the pros and cons of each group, and you'd be very surprised what the metrics and the parameters are for each. Not for each one, like the elite class obviously isn't a surprise, but especially like the new service workers, etc. But anyway, Social Class in 21st Century is the best book on class that I've read about, and it's just a fantastic read. Next up is Gendercide and Genocide. This was potentially the most important book I've read this year. This is an anthology about genocide and genocide. You know, the contributors in this book all explore mass killings, how it's kind of divided in terms of gender lines. Just read this book. Next up is Unequal Childhoods by Annette Leroux. In this book, sociologist Annette her and her team go into the homes of working class black families, working class white families, and middle class families of both races, and they observe family life. They observe how class plays a role in, you know, the different ways that children are brought up. And this made me think a lot just about parenting and, you know, the differences between middle class parenting and working class parenting. According to this book, the thesis is that middle class parents cultivate their child and their development in terms of always signing them up for extracurricular activities, making sure that their day is just jam-packed with, you know, all sorts of things from sports to piano lessons to God knows what else, to try and really cultivate their skills, whereas working class parents depend on a more natural development. they're hindered obviously economically to like send their kids out to like clubs and all that sort of thing. So yeah, this is a very good book, very, very good book. Next up, Austerity, The History of a Dangerous Idea by Mark Blythe. This book, as I said in my book review for this, should be mandatory reading. This is one of my favorite books of all time, and to be honest, they should give every adult this book as soon as you start paying taxes. As soon as you start paying taxes, as soon as you can vote, you should be handed this book. And Mark Blythe goes over like, you know, the 2008 financial crisis and what happened there, and austerity that came because of that. Blythe looks at, you know, America and Europe primarily, but he also goes into the philosophy of austerity and where the genesis of this idea came from, and why it always seems to be the last idea standing, and it seems to be the go-to. And so Blythe does a great job of, you know, the parallels between the philosophy of austerity and the policy of austerity, and the links there, and the big wigs, you know, the players that are involved, many of which of course are long dead, but yet the ideas still live on. Austerity is an absolutely fantastic book, just a great read. And lastly, I want to talk about Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, which is my favorite Harry Potter book. I reread the series again this year. I did so in 2020 as well, but my order for what was my favorite had changed. Before, it was the Half-Blood Prince, but I think that was mainly because it was just out of mainly anger and protest of like the absolute golden things that were left out of it. But for me, book-wise, Order of the Phoenix, even though it wasn't my highest rated, it is the one I love the most. It is definitely my favorite. It is the largest, and I love that. I love the whole thing. I love Umbridge and just her evil ways. I love Dumbledore's army. That was definitely the high point of this book. Harry's PTSD, his trauma, his anger is just so well done. It is just so well done in this book. If you haven't reread or read the Harry Potter series, you just have to. Again, it is timeless. I say it to my friends all the time to read it. As soon as my friends ask me what book do I recommend, I'm like, the Harry Potter series. Start there. Start with something magical and just work your way up, because this will have a special place in your heart. It has a special place in mine. Those are my favorite books of the year. I will be coming out with my worst books of the year list shortly, and I will also be tier ranking every single book I read this year, which will be an interesting video. And it'll actually be the first video with my face in it, I think, as well. So it'll be a semi-faceless channel. Anyway, tell us what you think in the comments. What were your favorite books of the year? And let me know if you read any of the books that I've read. On the screen right now is a playlist of other book reviews that you should definitely check out, because there'll be something there for you. I guarantee it. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.